back, everyone. We are in my gym, not in Antonio's gym, but the boys are back. We're just gonna start like that. The boys are back.
Boys are back.
We are shooting a couple different episodes today, but we are gonna start with, I think, a very important topic. It's a topic that I found myself talking about a lot this past week. I was at an employee healthy fair for a company here locally, and I had brought my FMS test kit. Or FMS, for those that don't know, is a functional movement screen.
Yep.
I think it's heavily scrutinized in the industry. I don't know if it still is. It was. I've never understood why, but I think it plays into a bigger picture of this idea of training systems.
Yep.
And there's a lot of them in 2025. As we're recording this, I can think of probably half a dozen off the top of my head. And I am very pro system. I don't even say that as a Parisi performance coach, but I just think that systems bring a lot of value. And for some reason, maybe the pendulum is starting to swing back more to neutral, but at one point it swung all the way to one side where trainers, coaches, businesses were like, well, I don't want to get married to a system. I don't want to be confined to a system. The system takes away from my ability as a coach. And as someone who's quite literally spent his whole life coaching, or his whole adult life coaching in the Parisi system, I have never once felt like a system has detracted from my ability as a coach. It's only amplified my ability as a coach, whether that be the Parisi system, functional movement screen, the foundational capacity screen, even going through like a certification. We'll talk more about that, but this episode is about training systems, the value of systems, where people can go wrong with systems, and I thought you would be a great person to talk to about, because you have gone through a lot of them, right? But you've also implemented it. So that's what this episode is about. We've got, as people who, if you're watching, you see the familiar face. If you're listening, you'll hear the familiar voice. Antonio Federico, the owner of the Vermont affiliate Parisi. Parisi at True Warrior. Is that, give me the full, what is the full title? Why can't I ever know this? Why can't I know this?
Because George won't let me be the Parisi Speed School of Vermont. That's why. So, George, if you're listening, let's just make it happen. So, it's technically the True Warrior Training, either powered by Parisi or the Parisi Speed School powered by True Warrior Training.
It was the only Parisi in Vermont.
Yep. So,
it is by default Parisi in Vermont. But it's, even when we were at the Edge, I still called it the Parisi. Like, it was like, because it does have like gym and gym feel. But either way. So that's what we're talking about today. We've got Antonio here in the home studio. I don't even know. I still call it my home gym, but it's my training studio. Yeah, it has its own doors. So I feel like its own, I call it the Raid Cave, really.
Raid Cave. I like that.
I had the lights shorted. I painted everything. The lights across the ceiling showed, so I need to replace those. I'm pointing like everyone can see it, but they can't. Anyway, let's dive into this. So this is something that I feel like you and I share in common as far as the trajectory of our training careers, how we started, right? I know for me, I was graduating. I was literally going through my last semester of college. This is 2011. I got the job as a Parisi performance coach in a Parisi that was opening in Vermont. So I had about 3 months to prep and learn the Parisi training system. After that, I got my CSCS. After that, I got my foundation or functional movement screen. After that, I went through functional range conditioning, and it was just system. You, very similar trajectory.
Very similar. Yeah, a little bit of reverse. So we did the functional range systems first, and then, we did, the CBT, and all those different ones. And then functional range system, then we went Parisi, and now we've been diving into multiple others.
All of them, right? So, but I remember having the conversation with you, and I've had this conversation with lots of trainers. My own bias is I went heavily into a system, and I found it useful. Because as a young trainer, it's one thing to get certified, and it's one thing to go to continuing education, to seminars, to have a mentor, whatever it might be, and gather this information. But I always found that training systems was the action behind the information as well.
Yep.
Right? And I think it can be overwhelming to a young professional or a new professional in the field of, here are all of these different exercises. Here are all of these different people with health limitations, movement limitations, and you have to really figure out the decision tree on your own. But having a system to learn from, to draw from, it's almost like having a entity as a mentor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right? It is. It's especially for a new coach, I feel like it gives you something. When you don't really have the confidence of years of coaching, you have a system that is proven and has proven results, that when you get the question of, like, why are we doing this? What's the point of this? The inevitable questions that we get, especially as a performance coach, because now we're talking not just, hey, I want to lose weight or, tone up or all these pieces. Like, no, I want to increase my speed. Like, I want to draw my 40 time from, a 5.0 to a 4.2. It's like, well, okay, now we're looking at these mechanical pieces. So, especially with that, I think it gives you confidence where you maybe don't have it yet. As a new coach, you can say, well, maybe like I don't have experience with this, but I have 33 years of experience with this that I can pull from. And I can say, here's what worked. We know this is going to work. I'm going to put it out here for you. I don't have to talk to it as like, I've done it. I can talk to it as, we've done it, because we're a system. You're part of a system.
Yeah.
So I think it gives you that luxury of, in early career stages, hey, maybe I'm not ready for this and I'm not fully confident, but I know a system and I know it works. So let me kind of dive into that. And I know, and we'll dive into this, I'm sure, but there's the overextended side of that where it's like, I'm only going to do this system and I'm only going to believe that this system is the Bible and the end all be all.
Yeah.
That has its problems.
So I think that's where we can talk about the different training systems, right? And I don't want this episode, I don't want it to be like pro one, con the other. I think every training system brings value, and it's exactly what you're saying, that it's the coach's job or trainer's job, whatever you want to refer to yourself as, to be able to pull bits and pieces, but also objectively question it.
Yeah.
And I think the best training systems provide an open forum for you to question them. Yeah. And I know I've sat at the table with Bill Parisi and John Cirillo and Eric Mitchell and Steve Leo and Chad Coy, and just straight up been like, why do we do this?
Yeah.
What did we do before this? Why did we move away from this? Or if we're adding something new, and this is literally the conversation of, hey, here's this concept. Where does it fit in the system? Who does it work best with? And how do we layer it in such a way that a 7, 8, 9-year-old can do it, and then 11, 12, 13-year-old can do it, 14, 15, 16-year-old, and what are those logical progressive steps? Because it might be something applicable to a 20-year-old that we know is really good, but that's not what we are. So the best systems do provide the open forum, but I want to take one big giant step back, because I think it's important for you and I to talk about what we think makes up a training system, because there's people who think it's a training system, right? Or think that, and I would say, if you having talked to a lot of new professionals, I don't want to say young professionals, just people transitioning into fitness as a second career, whatever it may be, people think that they're going to go through some type of education and it's going to provide a system.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. It can be the case, right? Because the system does provide education. But what, in your opinion, having gone through these things, what constitutes a well-equipped training system?
Yeah. So, I've done a lot. So, I've done both really good and really bad. I'm not going to name names on any, but...
I will name names.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll name names. We'll see. But, as far as what makes a good system, I think there's a couple major points that have to be hit. I think, one, they have to have good education. And I'm not just talking long education, like, hey, you're going to do this course for 40 hours, 60 hours, 100 hours. It has to be good education with a clear path and journey. Because I think where some systems go wrong is, hey, this is what we do. We're going to intro you, but our system's this big and, this wide. But this is your intro. And then once you're done, all right, cool, have fun.
Yeah.
See it. Yeah. Versus like, hey, here's the whole system. You've got 13 months to finish everything, let's say. And I'm going to walk you through every stage. Here's where you should start. Okay, what's your business like? What do you guys do? Do you do adults? Do you do kids? How does your business run? great. Okay, you probably should start here, and then let's focus on, the marketing piece. Like those, maybe you don't really need so much. You need the assessment and the implementation and, client check-in. You need that stuff before you need this because you're already bringing a client. So systems that have that, and I would say systems that have people that have been with them really long. Parisi has it. I'm recently started to do Active Life Professional. They have a really great team. So that's a new system I've been doing. But they've got a team just like that too, where it's like people that have been with them for years and say, hey, okay, let me talk to you, and then let's make our system work for you. Let's not make you work for our system, because I think that's where it can go wrong. And then past education, I think something that's really important is, like you brought up, a network, but an open and honest network that can have the conversation and say, hey, maybe we're not the best at this in this system. Hey, we know our strong suit is, youth long-term sports and development training. Like that's our goal. We do that really well. We're not really adults. We don't really hammer that side of things, but we're not going to try to make our system work for adults. And that's where I think some systems go wrong is, hey, our system works really well. Let's make it work for everyone. No. Our system works for this. We're going to help you do this. And you come to us and say, hey, I'm missing the mark on, these two things. Do we have any education around that? Oh, actually we do, or we don't. Let's develop it. Or being able to come to that system, learning other systems and coming in. I know the very first time I ever spoke with Bill, I'd come from the whole functional range background. And I came and he was doing, we were just starting the fascia conversation, that very first certification. And some of the stuff was a little, I'm not going to say old school, but from like what I came from, I was like, oh, this is like common knowledge. But there were a couple things I was like, this doesn't really make sense. So I, right after the certification, I was like, hey, Bill, I'm just curious, like why this? I was like, here's my background. And so we talked about some things. He's like, oh, that's a really good point. We should talk about this some more. And so that, to me, I was like, oh, wow. Like, that's awesome. It's like, I respect that because Bill's not sitting up there like, whatever. Bye.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, that's a good point. Let's talk about that a little bit more. And I came from it from more of like the rehab, older population clientele, not really the athletic. So when me and Bill sat and we talked about it, I was like, oh, that makes sense because now we're talking about an athlete, not somebody to try to rehab.
Yep.
Like, okay, cool, that totally does make sense. So I think those, from what I've found, those are two really good pieces. And then just a good team, like a good corporate team that you can ask questions to, that can help direct you to resources. Somebody that works, I'm not going to say for that system, but works in that system really well, that they can kind of help you navigate, the vets, the people you can call, say, hey, I don't know what to do with XYZ. If you ever run into that. And those are people that can say, hey, our system works really well, try this, but hey, maybe check out this other thing too. And that kind of builds your repertoire as a coach as well.
Yeah, so I want to pull three things out that you said, because I want people to walk away from this and say like, okay, well, if I'm looking at this, what should I look for? I heard you mention an identity.
Yep.
I heard you mention accessibility. Yep. And then I think what you said about education should be brought back up again, because there's a lot of scheming people in the industry trying to make a buzz, right? Yeah. So they go, well, here's where we start. And then you pay probably a decent amount of money. And I think that's another reason why, I'm very open when I talk with trainers about the order of operations, because we need to be able to, I don't think as a young trainer, I think it's fair to assume most new professionals in this field aren't making a lot of money. So when you're going to make an investment in yourself, which you 100% should be investing in yourself,
absolutely,
always, but especially in the first 3, 5, 10 years, you need to invest in a training system where you can receive a clear ROI.
Yeah.
Right? So something that you can invest in that will improve your training product, your coaching practice, right? So looking at the what are you getting to start? What are you getting involved in? Because I think of I'll use NASM as a great example, because I do think NASM has a phenomenal business model. Yeah. Just as a straight business, you have your CPT, and then you have your performance enhancement specialist, your corrective exercise specialist, your nutrition coaching, your special population. So then you start general and you get very specific, depending on the populations you may be interested in, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. So, but if you're going into it thinking you're going to come out as one of those specialties, you're not, right? So good business model, but as the consumer, as the trainer, you need to just know what the path is, and that's where talking to the network affiliation, the accessibility of the system is huge. Because if you're exploring it, right? If someone calls up Bill Parisi, and they're like, I'm interested in becoming a Parisi affiliate, Parisi coach, but I'm not quite sure. Is there someone I can talk to that's doing it? And they won't connect you.
Yeah.
Biggest red flag.
That massive.
The ultimate red flag is, well, yeah, we put you with our sales guy.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to talk to your sales guy. I want to talk
doing
to someone who's actually paid for it and is still doing it 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important because we look at a training system, a business like getting involved with a training system for your own education. Like you should know what those red flags are, but also you should know what those green flags are and what stands out. Because a lot of trainers I'm seeing that have been in this field for a long time are now creating their own little niche training system, which is good and bad, but might not necessarily be worth your time if it's not the population you train, if it's not what your population you're trying to train, or if it's something that you're just going to be this downward spiral of cost this, add this, whatever it might be. So for you, just kind of taking back is you're getting into, you get certified, you go through FRC. How did that impact you as a trainer? Can you just kind of share like going from a certified trainer, I'm training people, I run this training system. How did it help you? What did you expect? Maybe there was something that you didn't think was going to happen and it did. It could be positive, negative, very neutral, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest pieces for me was it started to give me a little bit of that confidence in a system, in having some principles and things to kind of teach and look at. I think one of the bigger things, though, is if you do a system and it's a good system, you get to talk to people, like you said, that are doing it, that can tell you, hey, don't do this. Like, I wasted a year doing this. It's not even worth it. I'm going to save you 12 months and several $1,000s. Do this instead. So having that, like, when you go to FRC, you go to the certification, you're in a room with all of the people teaching it, but also a ton of other people doing the course.
I did mine, it was like 75 people.
Oh, it was insane.
In a tiny gym.
Yeah, so we went to Boston College, which, by the way, such a nice facility.
Yeah.
I've been to Boston College 3 times now for 3 different certifications, all with the functional range system. Every time I go back, it's just like, I'm also a big BC guy, so like I walk in and I'm like, this is sick.
Yeah, it's just huge. Yeah,
it's massive. This is all, it's all branded. But so going to that and talking with people that have been doing it for 10 years, that are coming to research, and they're shooting it with the guys that are running the course, and they're like, hey, let me introduce you, and you meet Dr. Speedy and all the guys. And same thing when I did Parisi for the first time. But that kind of gives you the course where you can ask questions specific to your market, your environment, your business, and say, hey, here's what I'm just doing. Like, what are some major things I need to look out for? Like, that was one of the first things when I came back. They were like, hey, don't do this, this, or this. Try this in your market. Came back, and it was like, boom, we can take off with running. And so I've always been really lucky to have that and ask questions. I've also been the one, like, I'll bother the heck out of you until you answer my question. I have no problem with that. So that's definitely a pro. But I think one of the major things past that system is, as long as you get a good system, they're not only going to teach you the system, but they're going to teach you how to implement it. And that's the important piece that I think some of those smaller systems that are coming up don't really have, is they're just starting out. So they're like, here's what I did. It worked. And it's like, okay, but I'm a completely different market. I might love this and love your niche and everything, but we're in Vermont. It's a very vastly different market.
Yep.
And one thing I think from that can get tricky is those newer coaches, like I said, maybe not younger coaches, just newer coaches, maybe have been doing it, or they want to get interested in it, and they don't go for like the big system first. They go for like a smaller, super niche, maybe super expensive system. When that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm willing to pay for that and look for that because I've done, 7 or 8 big systems, Parisi, functional range system, FMS, I'm doing ALP now. Like, there's some bigger systems that everyone in the industry kind of talks about, uses different pieces of. And if you don't have that, some of those smaller systems will reference those things, or they will expect you to have a prerequisite of knowledge that you don't have. So like when I did functional range the first time, I didn't go to college. I don't have my CSCS. Like I didn't do any of that. And their back end education is like college level course.
Very much so.
And like I've had our training director, she she's in the medical she was in the medical field, and she has her master's. She's looked at the course and she's like, this is more than I learned when I did this in college. And I was like, awesome. But for me, I was like, straight out of high school, I was watching it and reading it, and I'm like, huh? I think where some people run into an issue is once they do the system, they don't redo the system. Like, you have paid access to it. Hopefully, either you pay for it and you have access for a lifetime, or you're paying a small like affiliation fee, but you have access to it all the time. You need to master that. Like, that's something I did not the greatest in probably the first 3 years of my career. Was like, oh, new system. And then I was like, I was decent, but I wasn't the master of all the systems. So now is the time like we're pulling the reins way back. It's like, okay, let me relearn everything.
Well, your perspective changed. It's like rereading a book.
Yeah.
Right? Like I always tell people I've read like 5 books in my life, but I've read those 5 books half a dozen times.
Yeah.
And one of the books that I'll just an example, like I read How to Win Friends and Influence People every 2 years.
Yeah, great.
I do it every 2 years because that's enough time where your perspective changes. You pull out different things that are pertinent to you today that weren't 2 years ago. And system education, system implementation is like that.
Yeah.
Because your business shouldn't stay the same for 2 years, right? If every 2 years, I think 2 years is kind of the sweet spot because you've done it long enough to know where you should change. Like, it's probably like 18 to 36 months, 2 years being right in the middle of that, where, okay, now I'm seeing a shift in my market, a shift in who I see this way.
Yeah.
And now I can kind of navigate my system and how I train and my coaching practice towards that. And then you do it again for 18 months to 2 years, and you see a slight shift and change, evolution typically, right? Change is a good thing in my mind. But if you're doing the same thing, like you're saying, you're just adding, compounding, more isn't always better. Better is better. I think speed training is like that, right? Like more isn't better. Doing it better is going to be better reality, right?
Yeah.
It's
simple.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot in All Access. Coaches be like, well, what about this? I'm like, well, just remember, like the sprint is the end result.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to get that better. So you don't necessarily need more. You just need to do it better, right? It's different when you're at the end result. And a lot of times, training systems do that. They give you the end result. And it's a different concept because when you go through a training certification, you're not given anything. You're given theory with some case study practical application for the most part, right? Like if you look at like the major 5 personal training certifications, right? ACE, NASM, NSCA, ISSA, and I'm missing probably a huge ACSM, right? So those are the major 5. Right, like you walk into any gym in the United States, you'll probably get a job with one of those 5 certifications.
Yep.
A lot of it is just theory-based learning, whereas a training system should take the theory but also give you the practical application. For me, that was huge because I went from training professors and training college teams for 2 years at SUNY Plattsburgh, best institution in America, shout out SUNY Plattsburgh. It's the best institution in America. And then I was kind of thrust into this commercial gym with a very general population clientele, all different ages, with an outpatient PT clinic in it. And Parisi gave me structured organization that even when I train Gen Pop, I can follow that same structure.
Yeah.
And I've seen it for I always tell people, I told this, you don't hire coaches, you build coaches. You build trainers. That's the beauty of a training system, because now I can say, here is a format. Yeah. Here is a structure that you can play with that we know works really well, and you can just swap out the parts based off of who you have. And that's something that I've never understood. And I would, for 4 years, I taught the Parisi certification, and I would go to largely facilities that were struggling because I was the new guy. And I would go and I would have this training director or these coaches be like, we like it, but I feel like it confines me. And I remember specifically in Louisiana at the last training certification I ever taught. And
Is this why?
yes, that's exactly why. This is exactly why.
Yeah.
And this facility was struggling, and it was because they kept saying to me they're bought into the system, but it was always this but. And once we looked at everything, we said, okay, well, let's classify this into two buckets.
Yeah.
One is here's the theory. This is just general education, and then this other bucket is the actual application.
Yeah.
Now, the application bucket is, I think, a lot more shallow, or an emptier bucket relative to the theory when it comes to a lot of physiology, speed training, what goes into science behind it. It's deep. But how you apply it really is a structure, a format, and a system like PEMDAS, right? Like math operations to series is how the order you do things.
Yep.
From the warm up to movement prep to what are you trying to teach? What are you trying to coach? A series of applications surrounding that, and then a cool down, right? And that's really it. So I would look at them and I would say, well, where are you getting stuck? And why do you feel like you aren't adapting to the softball team in front of you, or the group of 14-year-olds with 2 hockey players, 3 basketball players, a softball player, and 5 lacrosse players?
Yeah.
Look, what is telling you it has to be a certain way?
Yeah.
There's a structure that we already agreed on, that this is how a session should run. A warm-up, movement prep, some applications around a general.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4 pieces. We just titled them. I didn't tell you what to do with them. So what is the issue here, right? And I think that it's way more deep than that. But the issue that trainers may have of a system confines me, well, it's not the end all be all. It shouldn't be. I think anyone who runs a training system would say, yeah, well, we probably have a solution for that, but there are always going to be one-off cases in an individualized sentence, right? I do all one-on-one training. So for me to say the functional movement screen is the end all be all is complete asinine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have said this to Lee Burton and Greg Cook in the certification. Like, well, what about this? And then they would go, well, then you have to use your brain. You have to critically think.
You have to think.
And hopefully the training system has given enough education where you're able to critically think. And that is always the wild card with everything, because it's not intended to be this black and white. X happens, Y occurs, right? And that's where it gets a little culty.
It gets a little culty.
We get a little hand gesture in here. It gets a little culty.
It does get a little culty sometimes. And I think you bring up a really good point and that's where, when we talk about red flags and green flags, that's where you're really going to find red and green flags.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're going to find the ones that are like, no, this works for everyone. You do this. And if they can't fit into the system, make them.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, oh, all right, red flag. Like, wave the flag.
Yeah.
That's bad.
It's not how it's supposed to be. And I think that, and I'll bring it back to our conversation here, because you went from like ISSA to functional range conditioning into Parisi.
Yeah.
How have you blended, and how do you see systems coexisting in a facility where you train adults, you train kids, you have, I'll say, like, there's nothing wrong with saying you have a bias towards like, I have a bias.
I got a bias, 100%.
I totally do. Like, I run the functional movement screen with everyone when they come in.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the end all be all. Like, you probably do parts of FRA, you probably do the Parisi evaluation. How do you blend? How do you blend multiple systems? Period.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah.
How do you blend multiple? Like, specifically you, how do you blend them?
So I think I'm going to go a couple major pieces. One, I think in our industry, we are, dial back for a second. In this day and age, we're really lucky with social media, the internet, you name it, to be able to follow and talk to the people that are already blending systems. Joey Burrow's going to be a guy I reference. Fred Duncan. I mean, there's a ton of guys and girls out there that are coaches that have traded on these systems. Maybe not Parisi, or maybe not this one, but they've done similar things. You know, Altus is another speed one. Joey Burgos is practicing that one. So Joey's like one that early in my career, I was like, yo, this guy's sick. He's good. So I think having people that you can look at and say, all right, how do they train? I kind of want to be like them, maybe not exactly, but I like the way they train. I like the way they talk. So seeing how they blend systems and being able to talk to them too, hey, shooting them a DM, hey, look, I'm a new trainer, here's what I'm trying to do. Do you have 30 minutes? I'll pay you for your time. I always offer to pay someone for their time because, it's hard to be like, hey, give me an hour of your time when you're cranking with clients. And I'm going to be very transparent here. You're going to pay a lot more than you want to, but it's worth it because they've now cut down 20 years of training. If 1 hour with them is $1,000 and you cut down on 10 years of your career, it's worth it. Like, I don't love paying it sometimes, but it's
you can see a clear ROI on conversations.
1,000%.
For sure.
With conversations like that, you get way more ROI than a system.
Yeah.
Because they are going to tell you straight up, honestly, here's what works, here's what doesn't work, here's what I do, let me give you the resources, go use them. And it's like, sick, awesome, this was an hour, it's fantastic. So I think that's useful. Then when blending a system, I think, my pathing was develop a system, work in the system, and then you got to master it. You got to know the system, I would say like 75, 80%, because you got to be able to talk about it. Then when you go learn another system, this is where I think some people go wrong, is they take this system and they try to shove the systems together. And they try to say, this work. And it's like, okay, no, like that's not how we're going to do it. It's like a family reunion. It's like, I can't put certain people in a room. I got to make sure, so you got to take the system and you got to be like, all right, cool. They know their stuff really well. When I walk into the certification, I know jack. When I'm walking in, I know nothing. How do I do? And asking questions that might be a little more advanced is totally fine. But then you got to master this system. And that's the point where you take both, then you got to go sit in your own business, your own clientele, and you got to start practicing. I think what some systems don't talk about is you got to do it for like 6 months. Don't try to do anything other than let me take this client and let's work with them in this system.
Yeah.
That way I know, okay, I'm missing the mark now for the past 6 months on every client that we try to do X, Y, Z with. Let's call it acceleration. Okay, maybe I need to relearn acceleration, or maybe it needs to be this. Or, we have PT in-house. I'm rehabbing clients, and whereas in the our rehab times are really long. So knowing these things helps you know and figure out, okay, now how do I blend the systems to work for us? Here's where we missed the mark on these two. What pieces can I take from here? What pieces can I take from here? And then you got to, honestly, like you said, have a break. You got to sit and have some common sense.
If you're coaching, if you're implementing it,
yeah,
you will be able to critically think about it.
Absolutely.
Because you'll know that didn't go well.
It's very obvious.
That worked really well, right? It goes both ways, right? That's what it's the first thing that I tell a new Parisi. I'm like, well, how long have you been here?
Yeah.
How long have you done it? How do you know? Right? Tell me about the last 3 months. Yeah. And what have you tried to change to correct it yourself? Yeah. Because if you haven't tried to self-correct, you're just trying to get an answer from someone who doesn't know what your practice requires, your coaching system. Your business is on a pedestal. That is the only thing that matters. Because that is your livelihood, that is your clientele. You're bringing in family reunion analogy was perfect. You're bringing people in, right? So if you're not trying to navigate it yourself, if you think it's going to be a true set it up and forget it system, you're going to be in anything where there's a human on the other side. You are going to be a child. You are going to be so disappointed. It's not a set it, forget it, black and white. We do this, we do this. Sometimes it does happen like that. Sometimes, and that's a gift. But that's it, right? Yeah. So I like your analogy there, and I like that one piece. I want to just make sure it is driven home of you have to do it. 6 months is definitely the minimum. Because that'll give you enough time to see what works, what doesn't work. Because it really does probably turn around every 3 months. Okay, now I need to change this.
Yeah.
My seasons have changed, and I've seen this type of athlete, this type of person.
Especially if you're doing athletes about every 3 months. Yeah. Right? Maybe if you're doing gen pop, you get a little longer out of it, but athletes for sure.
It just has to, and that's the evolution, and that's the adjustment. So personally, I use functional moves. I've said it a couple different times, right? I assess everyone when they come in. But I do probably 90% of the full screen. But there's times, the reason I say 90% is there's times where I have a client, I can't get them on the floor. putting them on the floor is not an option. So there is no active straight leg
So
raise.
it takes out multiple of those steps.
Right?
Yeah.
There is no push up. Like, this person is not physically able to get to the floor and then back up without,
But
or
that's
it's a risk to their health to do it, right?
Yeah, and you have,
So what do you do?
right, and that's where it's like critically thinking here. If I can't get them to the floor, what's my first job? To get them to the floor,
Right?
like that. In some coaches, like that doesn't click. They're like, well, you can't do the active leg raise, which means we can't do your test. But it's like, no, if you can't get to the floor, that's probably our first goal. Let's get you to
our first job.
Yeah, let's get your point.
Get
You
you
do that.
up and off the floor safely.
Yeah.
Because how do you get at? I remember I had a woman that I worked with. She gets really bad vertigo, right? So
Okay.
like even like doing the hurdle step over, like having her look down and look up and stand on one leg, like to have her do that, where I know like through her intake form that she's like, I have really bad vertigo, my balance can be kind of suspect. I'm not going to have you unsupported on one leg stepping over a small rubber wire.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Like that's
asking for trouble.
that at some point that's gross negligence, and that's a lawsuit because
Yeah.
they've told me. And you know what we can do? I can just have you do a standing march, holding onto the squat rack, and I'll just see how well you can pick your foot up. Because there's a chance you probably can't get over the hurdle step as it's supposed to be done anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So we can make it work. We can kind of see what we're working with.
There's so many different pieces.
Right? Yeah, this idea of critically thinking, and it does come back to the don't. It's not a cult. The training system is a system. It's not a cult. It is not intended to be the end all be all. And people are telling you it is. It's a huge red flag.
It's a big red flag. I think when I talk to, I've talked to a couple of people that are just starting out the Parisi system too. I just sent one to Bill recently that actually got introduced to me. I just told him very straight up. I was like, here's what we're good at, here's what we're not on the call. And he was like, wow, okay. I was like, look, I'll introduce you to Bill. I'm more than happy. But, like, he's probably going to tell you the exact same thing. Like, here's what works, here's what doesn't work, man. And I told him very transparently, like, here's how my business works. Here's what we do really well.
Yep.
Here's what I don't even touch. Because as you know, we operate a very different model for Parisi standards than most, I would think, probably every other facility aside from Stan, maybe. Because me and Stan are very similar in how we operate. But, we know what works for us and we know what doesn't work for us. And so that's, one thing that I always try to tell people is, hey, like, here's what's going to work. But when dialing back to kind of the hands-on application side of things, I think something that's really, really crucial, and I'm seeing this now, like having to train a staff. It's no longer me. And I think you get to that stage, you tell me all the time, oh, I'm so glad you opened a gym.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Have fun our employees.
Have fun our employees. Yeah. Not that fun sometimes. But right now, on record, man, some days I wish I could go back. But what I will say is I do enjoy like the coaching and the teaching side of things. So I do get to now do the higher level of that when you're coaching and teaching a coach. However, sometimes I want to slam my head against a wall because they come to you with a question that you're like, why are we not just the most simple, like why, here's the simple exact answer. It's do a wall drive, let's say. But I'm way over here with this kid's XYZ mechanic and his shin angle and this and that and this. And I'm like, but can they do this? No. Then you just answered your own question. And that, like, I know for me, like, that comes from years of doing it and just being like, and me starting there in my early career being like, oh, your ankle, this, that, and just stepping back and being like, you know what, you're just kind of, I hate to say it, weak. Let's just do a little strength training. Build your core up.
Let's just get a little stronger.
And you put them right back on the wall 2 months later, and it's like, oh, wow, that fixes everything.
It really makes you appreciate the idea of skill acquisition.
Yeah.
Too. Like that's what we do. Like,
yeah.
But the Parisi training system is all skill acquisition.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, if you just haven't practiced the skill, you're not good at it.
Yeah.
And that's with assessments. The first thing that I tell people is like, just because you've never done it, so it'd be fair for me to objectify, like, good or bad. It's not the point, right?
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on bad assessments and language around assessments. Maybe we will someday. But it's the training system, like what you're alluding to with the staff. Like the training system can be duplicated amongst staff. It's scaling the unscalable, scaling the things that are hard to scale. Like the owner of the business, like we can't clone you.
God, I wish.
We can't.
I'd be rich.
We might be able to. We can't clone you, so we have to hire and be able to teach and train. And a training system can be duplicated.
Yeah.
Because it has these key elements, right? The theory, the application. Here's how you implement it, etc. So that is something that is of value for
Absolutely.
someone who wants to grow their business, right? It has to be scalable. How do you scale people? How do you scale the education that the person implements and learns from?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. I think that's a big piece of it for sure.
Long story short, I don't know how long this conversation was, but training systems, good.
Yeah.
Training systems, not culty, but can be. You need to know as a professional in this industry what to look for and why, and put some serious thought into it, because it's one thing to do it on your own, but at some point you are going to get to the point where you want to know the answers to the test, so to speak, so that you can scale your business, you can better monetize your business, you can bring more value to your business, and just all in all, drive better results faster for your training clients, whether it be conversations, the physical training, whatever it might be. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll hammer on the last point. I think being culty is not always a bad thing. There's a little bit of pros here and there, as long as it's...
Don't go great on this. What are you ending with?
All I'm gonna say here is it's not a bad thing as long as they're honest about their weak points. Like, you can be...
Well, that wouldn't be a cult then.
Well,
a cult would never say what they're...
We can be a little culty sometimes.
But they would never... But being honest in your weak points... I'm gonna push back on the last point. Because a true cult would never say they have weak points.
All right, that's fair.
They would never. They would say, well, if you're experiencing that, it's because you're not doing this.
All right, so we need a better term than cult then. We'll say network. There's a good network.
There's certain implement-specific certifications and training systems.
You said you were going to name names.
The RKC, the kettlebell crew, on occasion, can be a little... Kettlebell crews can get a little... When it's around an implement, it can get a little culty. It can get a little culty, right? And I did name names there.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go viral on our first video because we just talk. But around like the I call it the barbell brigade. It's like if you're putting one implement on a pedestal, it's a red flag. It's a red flag.
Yeah.
You can get real culty real quick. So that's a good episode.
That's solid.
We'll finish on that one.